Hi, I'm your host, Brent. Welcome to The Climate Guru, where we discuss pressing environmental issues, including with leading experts. Join us for insightful conversations to inform and inspire action in your everyday life. Hi, this is Brent, the Climate Guru. We were watching Venezuela after the United States captured its president and his wife, Maduro, and we're learning all about Venezuela's crude oil, which is one of the largest reserves of oil in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia. But we know that the oil is some of the dirtiest, heaviest oil in the world. It's laden with sulfur, it's tar, and it's so thick that it has to be heated and diluted. So that's one of the problems with Venezuelan oil. But Venezuela has a lot more serious environmental problems than just some of the dirtiest heavy crude oil in the world. Venezuela is really an ecological disaster, and it's been mainly because of the last 20 years of the Chavez and then Maduro regime. They have neglected, they have trashed, they have destroyed so much of the beauty and biodiversity and natural systems of Venezuela. Venezuela 20 years ago produced 3 million barrels of oil, the heavy crude, and it sold it. Compared to the United States, for example, we produce today 13 million barrels a day. So it was a major oil producer. When Chavez took over and in 98 and continued with Maduro, they kicked out the United States oil companies in 2007, which is Conoco and, of course, ExxonMobil, and they let the whole oil infrastructure go to hell. They didn't maintain any of the equipment, any of the storage facilities, and they didn't bring in other companies to help them maintain those systems and that oil. What's happened, for one thing, is oil spills are everywhere in the country. Venezuela has some of the most beautiful wildlife and natural areas on the planet. It's considered one of 17 countries in the world that are considered what's called mega diverse. That means they have very large amounts of wildlife that you don't see anywhere except these 17 countries in the world. They have endemic species, rare animal species, jaguars, dolphins, and others, wild birds. And they have some of the most beautiful natural systems, from high mountains. There's national parks. There's magnificent lakes, Orinoco, and others. They have an area in the south, which is part of the Amazon rainforest. They have their own portion of the Amazon rainforest. And really, the country's natural areas have gone to hell because of the corruption and neglect by this government the last 20 years, and it continues, and it's just getting worse and worse. One of the other things that are causing destruction of Venezuela's natural areas, because oil production went way down, it's now less than 1 million barrels a day, and that is really the resource that this corrupt government and its leaders depended on for their personal income that they stole from the government. The oil money is not there anymore, like it was. And so now they're allowing gold mining to go into Venezuela in the most sensitive economic and ecological zones. And gold mining, there's thousands of gold mines, many illegal gold mines across Venezuela that the government allows and sanctions. And gold mining not only destroys forests, but in the process of mining gold, they use mercury, which is very toxic, and it's released into the rivers, into the lakes, and also into the land. So it's basically destroying these natural areas. The water system, the water supply in Venezuela is compromised. Because it's a biodiversity hotspot, they are endangering all these rare species of animals that are unusual in the planet. The economic collapse because of mismanagement and the drop of oil production and oil prices has caused 1/4 of the population of Venezuela to flee. Over 6 million people, many of them just walking on foot through the Darien Gap in southern Panama, north of Colombia, absolutely desperate. People are desperate, and over half the people are in severe poverty, and 1/3 don't have food security. So these people are desperate to do anything they can just to eat, just to survive. One of the things they do is they trade in wild animals. It's a $300 million business in Venezuela. So these rare species of birds, of dolphins, of capybara, they're capturing these. Sometimes they eat them for bushmeat, monkeys, manatees, and sometimes they sell them in the $300 million wild pig trade. They're destroying biodiversity. They're undermining the carbon storage in the Amazon, which is a huge area of storage of carbon in the soil and in the roots, like the Amazon in Brazil and the 8 other countries that share the Amazon. Deforestation has been especially bad in Venezuela, especially in the Amazon. And this situation is not getting better. Venezuela is destroying its national parks. The corruption continues. The pollution of its lakes and rivers and coastlines are being destroyed along the Caribbean. All the environmental agencies have been hollowed out. They've just put in people who are politically loyal to the government, and they are not doing anything to enforce the environmental laws. They're just living off this gold mining money as their private income. And Venezuela is a wreck. And let's get into it in a little more detail about the specifics of all these things that I've mentioned. So continuing with Venezuela, the government really neglected, kicked out the major oil companies, both ExxonMobil, Conoco, and they say that it would take 20 years and more than $100 or $150 billion to rebuild the infrastructure of oil. It's been neglected. It leaks oil into the rivers, into the land, into the magnificent freshwater lakes, Lake Maracaibo, into areas of the Amazon along the coast. So Venezuela doesn't have enough fresh water to drink because of all the oil spills and because of the incompetence and neglect and corruption of this government. It's tragic. Not only do the people suffer in Venezuela with a very repressive, brutal government in the last 20 years, which is just getting worse, but it's destroying the natural areas that wild animals thrive in and live in. And Venezuela has some of the greatest number of wild animals and rare species on the planet, that it denigrates farmland. It denigrates coastal areas. It destroys forests. It destroys mangroves. So it makes it difficult for people to also survive. The gold mining is something that has really, as far as income is concerned, it's replaced oil in many ways. Illegal gold mining that the government sanctions. They let companies come in. Many are foreign. They're corrupt. And so the gold mining uses mercury in part of its process to extract gold from soil. And mercury is very poisonous. And mercury goes right into the waters, into the rivers, into the lakes, into the soil, and poisons it. Indigenous communities in Venezuela have suffered horribly from the poisoning of the rivers that they rely upon to fish, to gather protein and other things. And the indigenous people have very little protections. They're not respecting them at all. There's lots of different types of minerals, not just gold. And it's also copper, diamonds, which are rare metals. They're used in cell phones, bauxite. And 90% of the gold in Venezuela is exported by transnational organized crime that pays the government. And the government is now living on this money, on this bribery money from the illegal gold mining in order to live personally, to steal from the government and to replace the money they used to get from the oil revenue. But there hardly is any more oil revenue, as we understand. The area, they created an area called the Orinoco Mining Arc in southern Venezuela, which is a 112,000 square kilometer area, which is a 43,000 square mile area in the southern states of Bolivar and Amazonas. When they took over the oil, they hoped to attract major companies, oil companies, but nobody would come in because they nationalized the oil in 2007 from ExxonMobil and Conoco. Same thing with mining. They hoped the Venezuelan government, when they created this area, this Orinoco Mining Arc, a huge area where they have so many mines, that they hope to attract international mining investment to Venezuela. But the criminal elements there, the guerrilla groups, drove off all the potential mining investors. So that's what we have now, just illegal mining that destroys the environment, that incursion on indigenous communities, and pays off the government, basically, in order to remain there. The other problems that they have is that there's indigenous tribes. Many causes for deforestation, and one of the biggest causes is cattle ranching, which is running amok in Venezuela as it is in parts of Brazil. And they knock down forests to do pastures for beef cattle ranching. And that is destroying the rainforests and the high forests and the higher elevations, which many of them are national parks. They also destroy forests just to provide feed for cattle and for mining, for miners that work there. In the coastal zones, they have some of the most beautiful mangroves along the Caribbean coast. Those are being destroyed. As we know, mangroves are probably the tree that stores more carbon in its roots and soil around it than any type of tree in the world. The mangroves in the coastal zone are being destroyed. And in the archipelago, next to that, in the national parks, which are high elevation, and in the Caribbean marine reserves. One of the other great tragedies in Venezuela is the trade in wild animal species. This is happening in many places in the planet, in Africa, especially in Latin America and South America and in the Caribbean. and in Central America, which is a tragedy because we know that many species have declined precipitously because of destruction of their habitat, natural areas all around the tropics in the world. Now, what's tragic is Venezuela is one of 17 megadiverse countries on the planet. A megadiverse country means there's so many wild animals and plants in the country. The 17 megadiverse countries have 70% of all species on the planet, and Venezuela is one of them. Venezuela has 21,000 plant species. 38% are endemic, which means they don't exist anywhere else on the planet. They are native to Venezuela. There's 8,000 animal species that are endemic. 1,400 bird species. And of course, they have land across the Caribbean coast to the Andes, to ice-capped mountains, and they have dense jungle, savannas in the Amazon, and the rainforest has some of the highest number of endangered animal species, 193 in Venezuela, according to the Union for Conservation of Nature Red List. So what's going on there is a free-for-all for wildlife trafficking. It's estimated to be a $300 million business annually. Poaching, trafficking wild animals. They destroy forests, habitats, the place where these animals live. They catch them. And the tragedy is not only do they catch them for the wild pet trade, which is illegal. Most of the pet trade, the animals, whether they're jaguars, whether they're birds, whether they're turtles, are exported to Europe and the United States. But they're actually capturing these animals for food, whether it be monkeys, even some of the felines, jaguars, pumas, they're actually killing them for food. So it's a free-for-all. There's absolutely no control over this exploitation of the wild animals in Venezuela. The jaguars, the largest cat in the Americas, is hunted in Venezuela for its skin and body parts. They're used in traditional medicine and also as trophies. The giant river otter in Venezuela is targeted for its fur. There's turtles and tortoises in the Orinoco River. They're poaching them for meat and also for shells, and they destroy the habitat. Tropical birds, tropical scarlet macaws, parrots for the pet trade. And they have in Venezuela howler monkeys, capuchin monkeys for pet trade. And tragically, they're also captured for bushmeat because people are starving all across Venezuela. They catch armadillo. They poach them for meat and for the pet trade. Iguanas, again, meat and pet trade. Manatees, which are one of the endangered mammals that live in fresh waters in the world. Capybaras are hunted for meat. Dolphins in the rivers are hunted for meat. And the biggest consumer of these wild animals and animal parts is China. That's because they believe that a lot of them have certain properties that help in various illnesses. And also, I believe they have other properties to increase sexual drive and things like that. And it's all completely ridiculous. In the past 2 decades, Venezuela has lost 1.5 million acres, 600,000 hectares of primary humid forests, an area larger than 1 million football fields. So the country's being destroyed. There's no control. The government doesn't care. All the institutions, environmental institutions have been hollowed out. It's run by just a gang of criminals in the government and criminals in the country who destroy it, who are involved in the pet trade and illegal ranching and gold mining. So Venezuela is a lot bigger mess than just the dirty oil that it has, maybe the biggest reserves of oil in the world. And the United States oil companies have told Donald Trump they have no interest in going in. After all, ExxonMobil and Conoco, the government of Venezuela seized their assets in 2007 and threw them out, took all of their equipment, and weren't able to convert it and maintain it and have other oil companies or the Venezuelan National Oil Company continue. It was a total disaster. So why would these oil companies go back in? The head of ExxonMobil said to Donald Trump, it's uninvestable. It's not a country we can go into. It costs $150 billion in 10 or 20 years to rebuild the oil infrastructure. They've already been kicked out twice in Venezuela. Why would they go back? They have made claims, legal claims against Venezuela, and they have huge judgments based on arbitrations of billions of dollars against the government. So there's no incentive. It's not safe for their employees who would be in Venezuela, whether it's roustabouts on the oil rigs or executives or anyone. The oil companies aren't going in. So Donald Trump is left with nothing, with a white elephant. He didn't think about what could be done in Venezuela. The government has not changed at all since he took out the government of Maduro and his wife. The vice president is part of the same party. She continues the same corruption, which is basically Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president. The military is corrupt. Diosdado Cabello is one of the most powerful men in the country. He started with Chavez. He participated in the attempted coup in 92. It failed with Chavez. He became a close associate with Chavez, and he controls more of the wealth and more of the military and security apparatus and guerrillas than anybody. He controls the colectivos, which ride around on motorcycles and terrorize people. He controls much of the military. He's probably the largest owner of property. A former prosecutor in Venezuela who was there 17 years ago and has left said that José Cabello has stolen everything that could be stolen in Venezuela. And this government really has very little control over what's happening. Donald Trump, it was a folly to go in. Nothing can happen. The people of Venezuela who are desperate, who are hungry, their lives aren't going to be improved. Oil is not going to be their savior. And oil is not going to be a savior for America or American companies because it would cost too much to rebuild the infrastructure and to drill it, and it's not going to happen. In Venezuela today, 30% of the Venezuelan trash is not even collected. It's thrown into rivers and ravines. There's no proper landfills to maintain trash and dispose waste of the country. It's just thrown into unregulated informal dumps. What a disaster. The Venezuelan National Oil Company, Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., state-owned oil company, reported more than 46,000 oil spills from 2010 to 2016. They are not reporting any more oil spills since 2016, but they're occurring daily, destroying lakes, rivers, wildlife, drinking water all across the country. Huge oil spills, according to reports everywhere. Thanks for tuning in to the Climate Guru podcast. Stay inspired, stay informed, and keep taking action for our planet's future. Until next time, and remember, together we can make a difference.